All right, so I want to talk about the enabler today. You know, the narcissist's biggest support, the narcissist's biggest ally. And I want to ask the question, can you turn an enabler? Can you pry the enabler from the relationship they have with the narcissist onto your side? You know, bring them into the light, bring them into the good. And this comes from a viewer. So a viewer wrote in saying how they've been watching the videos and they've been learning and gaining awareness and getting to the truth about the situation they're in. And I guess their situation is they have a narcissistic parent, then another enabler parent, a golden child sibling, and then I believe they're the scapegoat. And so they said that, yeah, so they've been learning, becoming more aware, and they've made the decision to go no contact. And I was like, yes, good for you. I mean, no contact is what we all want. But they're like, I went no contact and it's great, but I'm going back for the enabler. I want to try to bring the enabler, onto my side. And so I read that and I was kind of like, I don't, I was like, man, I think it may be a waste of time, but I want to reason this out. Let's really think about it. And so I think in order to really answer this question, we have to really understand the enabler, number one, and the psychology behind these people. And then we need to really understand that relationship that the narcissist and the enabler have together. And so I have a lot of experience in this because I have a raging narc mother and I have a submissive enabler father. And I've also been an enabler when I've had narcissistic girlfriends. I enabled their terrible behavior. So, you really, to understand the enabler, you have to understand the psychology of the enabler and what makes these people, what turns someone into an enabler. And from my understanding is that enablers are made out of traumatic situations. So, an enabler let's talk about my dad. So he had a narcissistic father that was like a raging drunk, and he was mentally, physically, and emotionally abusive to him and the family members. And so the result was, and this happened when he was a kid. So what ended up happening is, it's what we call the trauma bond. So a trauma bond gets created because you're forming an emotional relationship and attachment to your parent, and they are abusing you. And that is creating trauma in how you are connecting to this person, how you're loving them, how you're learning about caring for people. And I think that's key with understanding, who enablers are at the core is, they are children that have experienced emotional trauma from a parent. And so what ends up happening is this thing called the trauma bond forms. And as the enabler who's been abused as a child starts to grow up, the only way they know to connect with people and find love and to receive love is through traumatic, emotional, physical, mental abuse. And that's where this vicious cycle starts. And what's interesting is it takes a narcissist or some sort of abusive adult, to do this to a child to then create these enablers. And then in turn, these enablers become the biggest supporters and cheerleaders of these raging, abusive, narcissistic people. And it's this vicious cycle. And so in my case, I grew up in an emotionally traumatic environment with my raging narc mom and my enabler dad. And it was just, getting hammered constantly as a child. And so then I developed the trauma bonding out of the only way I understood how to receive love was from this raging narc woman. And so then as I'm growing up, I'm seeking out, I'm trauma bonding to other people, other women who are narcissistic in nature and treat me like shit. And so in turn, I become an enabler to these terrible women that I'm dating. And so when I think about my dad and the relationship he has with my mother, being the enabler, and he's really in this role of, he's like 1 foot in with the narc, and then he's 1 foot out with with me, or the, of the good. He's got one foot in the bad, one foot in the good. And from my experience is, because I chose to call out the narc and say, you're a shitbag, and if you want to have any kind of relationship with me or my family, it has to be on the terms of mutual respect. It was very simple. It wasn't complicated. It wasn't anything crazy. It said, if you want to have a relationship with us, particularly me, because I've been the scapegoat my whole life, and I've been the biggest source of supply for my narc mom. So I just said it like it is. Listen, we can have a relationship, but it has to be with mutual respect. But you know what? Yeah, right, man. They can't have it. They don't understand mutual respect, because to them, it's just they just treat everyone like shit, and that is the program, and you either stand in line or you get hammered even more. So calling her out, yeah, of course, that's not going to do anything. And then trying to express to the enabler who's supporting her behavior, and saying, hey, this is a toxic environment, and I'm a grown man, I'm an adult, I have a wife and kids. I don't want to be emotionally and mentally abused by my mother. Like, those days are over. And the enabler, my enabler dad, he like listens and agrees, and he's like, yeah, she's really evil, and yeah, and that's really bad, and this and that, but he just kind of placates. He's just placating to me. And it really makes you think of, okay, so the power of the trauma bond from the enabler to the narcissist is more powerful than a parent's love for a child. Because, in my opinion, if abuse is happening in the home and a child is being emotionally, mentally, physically abused, whatever's happening, and that's being done by a parent, and another parent is living in the same house and observing this happening to the kid. And obviously, any child that's experiencing this is going to act out in strange ways, and that's exactly what I did. And you think it's like, well, how the fuck could someone just sit there and let this happen to their own kid? And so for me, I have a lot of anger towards my enabler dad. I'm fucking pissed, man. Like, why didn't you stand up for me? Why did you let this happen that ultimately led me to this path of destruction and almost killing me? And you think, like, reflecting back, and it's like, wow, the bond that the narcissist and the trauma bonded enabler have to one another is super, super powerful. Like, you can't, I don't think it's possible to break that bond by reasoning. I don't think you could reason with an enabler, because I've tried reasoning with my dad just straight up. And like I said, all he does is placate. He sits there and he's like, yeah. He's like, you're right, yeah. And he's even said, yeah, she's really evil. I'm like, yeah, man, she's a demon. She needs to be put in her place. You need to either kick her the fuck out of here so we can just have a nice, loving family unit, or basically it's like, we're out, and then we won't have to deal with you guys ever again. And he's always like, oh, you can't go, and I want you guys here, I want our family. And it's like, well, what kind of family is this when you have someone who's just carving the soul out of it? That's no family. That is a traumatic environment, a toxic, emotional, traumatic environment I don't want anything to do with. So, you really got to ask the question of, with these enablers and these narcissists, it's like, what is the narcissist providing for the enabler? Because I remember even when I was trying to reason with him, and like, the narcissist had left, was gone, was like buying some chi-chi shit somewhere, and we're alone, and we're having this conversation, and he's like looking over his shoulder, like, oh man, like, do you think she can hear us? Like, is she around? And so he's like, he's scared of her. He's scared of her possibly hearing him saying something bad about her and what those repercussions will be. And so I'm thinking, I'm like, okay, so this person is being emotionally, they're trauma bonded to this narcissist. The narcissist is doing exactly what their parent did to them, which is just abuse them. So you got to think of like the psychosis that's occurring with these enablers of like, so they're just loving the abuse. They're comfortable in the emotional, the mental, the physical, whatever the form of abuse is. they're comfortable in that, because every day these enablers are making the decision to stay with this terrible demon abusive person. And so like my dad, he just keeps coming back every day. And you think, like, that's insane, man. Like, why would you love someone and want to be a part of their life when they're just treating you like shit every single day, day in and day out? And so you think, it's like, okay, so this enabler, I want to bring them onto my side. I want to bring them into the light. I want to give them love. So what? You give them love, which I've tried this with my dad, is like, man, like, we're here for you. Like, I want to give you support. I've invited him over for dinner. Like, come hang out with the family, and leave the narc back home watching, whatever fucking soap opera on TV, and come over and have dinner with us. And it's just all love. But you got to think, like, he's not comfortable in that. He doesn't understand. See, these enablers, they don't understand the light. They don't understand the good. They don't understand love. All they understand, and they choose to accept, is the abuse, is the torment, is the chaos, is all the dark energy. That's what they're comfortable in. And so the power of the trauma bond that these narcissists inflict on children, that then grow up to become adults, and then bond to other narcissists, to then in turn become, like, these enablers, they're their main supporter. They serve many functions for the narcissist. Like in my family, the enabler is financially supportive to the narcissist. The narcissist doesn't do shit. She basically just puts around and just spends money all day. So he provides financial support to her. He is her, like, little like errand boy, like, go do this, you need to do that, kind of bosses him around. And then he's definitely the like complaint department. So anytime the narc is stirred up about something, she just kind of hammers him with the complaining for, like, he usually lasts about a week or two. She'll complain about these kind of things that don't really matter, and then finally she complains enough, and then he brings it to me, because I'm the only one, because we share a property, and I'm like the one who can do work. I have heavy equipment, and it's a big property, and so she'll complain about something, and then eventually he'll break, and then he comes to me, and I'll solve the problem for him. But but yeah, okay, so obviously they love the abuse. So we understand that. But is there a way? There's got to be a way to break the cycle, because I was an enabler for years. I had narcissistic girlfriends, every few years I would cycle through a new one. And I broke the cycle. I'm no longer an enabler, and I'm no longer under the narcissist spell. I was able to break free and come out of it and improve, and then find just a normal woman that I could have a relationship and marry and start a family with, who's just a normal nice person. And so if I can do it, and I was an enabler, then I think any enabler who is stuck in that situation can do it. But the whole thing with that is, it's just like some of my friends who are like strung out on drugs, man. Like, and I tell them, like, you gotta stop using drugs. You're gonna it's not gonna end well for you. They're never going to stop unless they make the decision. If some kind of event, something that flips the switch in their mind or in their heart or their soul or whatever it is that allows them to think and question what's happening to them, and it's only in them. So if you're thinking that I've seen the light and I've changed, and now I know that my enabler parent is a good person deep down within, and that I want to bring them onto the good side, you really have to question the fact is they're the only ones who can do it for themselves. And I don't know I don't know if another person can do that for another person. I think that trauma bond is so powerful. And the big thing with narcissist parents and enabler parents is the narcissist really keeps the enablers isolated, because especially as we watch these old ass narcissists, age out, their whole supply and support mechanisms and systems they had in place for years and years and years slowly fade and dwindle. And as they get older, they find themselves with less and less supply. So the enabler then starts filling that role as being their little blood boy. They just suck them dry till they're not like completely toast, let them recharge, and then just do it all over again. And so it's key for the narc to like keep these enablers, close, because even when I first was figuring all this out, I was like starting to pull my dad towards the good. But I didn't know what I was up against. I was just kind of figuring all this stuff out, and it was like, oh shit, it was all starting to make sense, and I was like getting the truth. I was becoming aware, and I was really starting to understand. And I was trying, man, to like form this bond with my dad, to pull him, and for him to make a decision that would really save our family. But the narc, she like smelled it, man. I could tell she was hot on that instantly, and she just came right out and just fucking triangulated him and the golden child, my younger brother, against me. And it was just like, womp, you're done, bro. And they just pinched me out, which is fine. You know what? They can all have that. Because, it's like the decision's on them. If they want to like worship the demon narc for the rest of their lives and have some miserable life, then, fuck it, man. It's your choice. So I have, presented the question of like, okay, so say the narc dies, and then the enabler is alone. Like, what does that look like? Because, their whole life is really dictated by this demon. And so, they're under the spell. Everything's fully dictated to them. They're just like fully controlled. They're just like, a dog on a leash to this person. And then that person is gone. Like what happens inside the enabler? Does a switch flip and like the spell is broken and they're like, wow, holy cow, like there's a whole world out here, and wow, you guys are really nice. And like, I kind of don't think so. I don't think so, because I think they would actually, maybe they would seek out another narcissist so they could feel what they want to feel with all the abuse. Maybe that abuse becomes like they're addicted to it, like maybe part of the trauma bond that makes it so strong is it actually becomes physically addicted to them, addicting, like their bodies are addicted to, being mentally, physically, emotionally abused. And, maybe that's part of what makes it so strong. So I don't know, I've never seen this situation play out where the narc dies and the enabler like loses their mind or they become cool or what. But it'd be interesting. I don't know if it's happened to you or if you know someone. It'd be interesting to see what would happen. But ultimately, just to kind of round it out, if you're thinking, yeah, I'm gonna like throw the enabler a life raft, it's not happening, man. Like honestly, it's got to happen inside of them. It is possible, because I was an enabler and I broke the spell and came out of it, and now I'm free. But no one was going to do that for me. I had to do all that myself. So, maybe you could leave some breadcrumbs that the enabler could follow, but I really doubt it, man. And really, the only thing that could do it would be time away from the narc, because the narc catches the scent of you trying to do something to pull the enabler from them, especially if they're old. They're going to do all they can to hold on to that supply and that support system. But the sad part about the enablers is that they are just as complicit and guilty as the narcissist, because it's really the enablers are the ones who could put these people in their place. Me being the golden child, trying to stand up to the narc and express that the behavior is wrong, and trying to put that person in their place, it really had no effect. But really, if the enablers stood up to the narcissists and really called them out and kind of exiled them rather than just supporting them all the time, I think a lot would change. But we're up against a very strong force. These narcissists have a lot of power, and it's very evident in the life of the enabler. So anyway, I hate to douse water on the fire, but yeah, the enablers are on their own path, and they're making their bed and they have to sleep in it. Anyway, as always, I appreciate your time, and thanks for watching. And feel free to shoot me a comment or an email about your situation. We can kind of reason it out, and I think this is really helpful. Anyway, it's about to rain, so I'm going to shake a leg. Have a good one.